Hello and welcome to our session called Integrate Your Ansible Systems into SUSE Manager 4.2. This session number is tutorial 1128. And today's session agenda is I'll be discussing what SUSE Manager is and some of its main features. I will review why we integrated Ansible into SUSE Manager, and then I will show you how to do it via the slide deck. So in the very end, when you have the slide deck, at least you have the pictures and the steps that it took to get this configured. Um, Pablo will then demonstrate how it all works within SUSE Manager. But before we start, let me do some introductions. My name is Anthony Tortola. I'm a senior sales engineer with SUSE, and joining me virtually is Pablo Suárez Hernández. He is a software engineer within SUSE. So with that, let's go ahead and ask. But first, what is SUSE Manager? SUSE Manager is a true open source management tool that is designed to simplify and secure your systems wherever the devices may be located. SUSE Manager can manage a mixed Linux environment easily, as we support not just our own distribution. Through a single pane of glass, you can schedule updates, configure, manage, and audit your mixed Linux environment. There is no need to use different management tools to maintain these different Linux distributions. Um, for example, sometimes an application is only certified to run against a specific Linux distribution. That's not a problem for SUSE Manager. SUSE Manager can manage almost every enterprise Linux out there, as you see, SLES, CentOS, RHEL, Oracle Linux, Ubuntu, and Debian. We also manage some community editions like OpenSUSE, like Alibaba Cloud Linux, and a couple more. SUSE Manager is the best open source solution to manage Linux configurations and compliance across different hardware platforms, including x86, IBM Power and Z systems, and Raspberry Pi. And we could do this also quite easily across physical, virtual, container, and cloud environments. So now that we've seen the who and the where SUSE Manager can manage systems, let's take a look at some of its key features. Let's go ahead and start with configuration management and automation. SUSE Manager uses SALT for connectivity to clients. It uses it for configuration management and OS image creation. We provide all the needed SALT binaries for the distributions that we support, but SALT is not the only option you have for configuration management within SUSE Manager. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. With SALT, you could have, for example, your security settings that have been approved by your security team applied and then enforced. If any unauthorized changes are made to those settings, it will be remediated upon the next device check-in. But even better, SALT can detect changes in your environment, such as a new device was added to it. And we have that function. It's called a SALT reactor. This gives you event-driven automation. Like, for example, when a new device is brought into your environment, you could apply those aforementioned security policies immediately. And speaking of security, as in most companies, there are compliance officers keeping a watchful eye on your infrastructure. Usually, they will develop rules on how a server or service gets deployed within their data centers. Some will base these rules on well-known guidelines from institutional standard-based groups like CIS, NIST, or DISA. And SUSE Manager provides you with the ability to use a tool called OpenSCAP, and we provide the same policies to go ahead and do a scan on that device and compare it to those guidelines. Then SUSE Manager will display that device's level of compliance. Any deviation that's not acceptable to your environment can be remedied with either using SALT or Ansible configuration management. Sometimes an auditor may ask you if your systems are vulnerable to a specific CVE. We have a function called CVE audit within SUSE Manager that allows a system administrator that can audit all the devices within the infrastructure and look to see if any are vulnerable. At this point, the admin could take action to remedy the vulnerability or pass on a report to either his team or other team members to go ahead and manage that vulnerability and schedule the patch cycles. With both OpenSCAP and CVE audit, SUSE Manager can ensure the compliance level within your infrastructure. So that's security. So let's move on to the heart of lifecycle management, and that's patching and upgrading. SUSE Manager leverages the Linux distribution's native package update stack to deliver and update packages that are installed on the system. In this way, the distribution can check to see if there are any package dependencies the updated package may need, and report that back to SUSE Manager. At this point, SUSE Manager could see if those dependencies can be resolved with the existing packages in the repositories, or just outright fail the job. This keeps the device in a consistent state. So we say there's no broken modules here. For administrators that are using SUSE Linux Enterprise Servers or SLES, we have added some unique functionality to handle SLES. SLES distributions have a notion of being divided by service packs. Unlike other distributions, this is much more than just a point release, and so we say it should be treated like it's a separate distribution. For example, if you're running SLES 12 SP4 and you want to go to Service Pack 5, you will use a function called product migration toolset. This feature will allow you to schedule the upgrade for the server to the latest code, and it can be done in either point and click via the UI, or you can do this in a programmatic fashion via a API call. Another example of some additions we did for SLES is if you want to do a major version upgrade, say from SLES 12 to SLES 15. So we call that an offline migration. SUSE Manager, again, can help you do this upgrade. Not only can you perform this in-place upgrade without the need of a Pixie server, but you can also perform this upgrade on both your on-prem or your cloud data centers just as easily. It makes no difference to SUSE Manager. Now that we have patching and upgrades resolved, let's take a look at what SUSE Manager environment may look like in the field. Here you'll see that SUSE Manager uses a classic client-server architecture, and this is kind of a simple or basic setup. You have SUSE Manager at the center, and it speaks to the customer center or the SUSE customer center to see its entitlements and be able to synchronize patches. It also can talk to third-party repositories and synchronize down to the SUSE Manager server itself. This keeps your firewall only having to have one device be able to go through it versus having all your clients go through it. And then as you move down the photo here, you'll see that you can directly connect clients to the SUSE Manager server, or you can set up what's called proxies. So the proxies will handle the workload for the SUSE Manager and delivering the patches. And also, you can start dividing your environment up by either location, like say your data centers, or within the data center for different lines of businesses. This makes it much more of a logical approach and takes the workload off the SUSE Manager server and reduces network traffic. One thing is important to note, we did make a change to how we do our subscriptions for our SUSE Manager. In the past, we sold the SUSE Manager server itself, plus the lifecycle management SKUs for the clients. Now we just bundled it all together. So you buy one SKU, it's called the Lifecycle Management SKU Plus, and then all you really need to do now is count your clients. This allows administrators to use as many SUSE Manager servers or proxies as needed for their environment. With that being said, you can see this is a much more complex environment, and I'm utilizing that feature now that I only have to count clients, so I can have as many proxies as I need and many servers as I need. And we have and here's a design for, we call it the hubs setup. The hub server really just is what speaks back to the customer center or the third-party repositories. It synchronizes the patches that you want to make available within your infrastructure, and then the other SUSE Manager servers in your environment can then decide to pull which packages that they need for their environment to their SUSE Manager server. This really gives customers or companies the ability to have much more isolation between data centers and or groups of lines of businesses. And then you could also assign specific administrators to those different SUSE Manager servers. So it gives you the ability really now to control or have much more of an air-gapped environment between groups of servers. So now that you've seen some of the key features within SUSE Manager, then you can see where we can manage devices and who we can support. We get to the next real burning question. The question being, why integrate Ansible into SUSE Manager? It's a good question. Just simply because Ansible's out there. It's in all of our customers' IT infrastructures today. Um, they've made the investment already, so we don't want them to have to say lift and shift. Security has done their audits on it already, so they already have their security audit playbooks. And quite frankly, Ansible playbooks are really available all over the place for whether it's third-party vendors or other, say, administrators putting out different playbooks for other people to consume. But they do face the same problems they had before. They have no real-time monitoring. It's not event-driven orchestration. It's very difficult to scale. And if you don't have Ansible Tower, you have no API or UI. But that's where SUSE Manager comes in. With SUSE Manager, to manage real-time monitoring, we have something called a beacon. For event-driven orchestration, we talked about this already. We have reactors. And as far as scalability, the backend is using 0MQ for the message bus. And if you want to scale even further, you go with the hub design as we saw too. And the front end, if you want a nice UI or ability to use APIs, that's where SUSE Manager really comes in. So with 4.2, what's new is we really started that initial integration with Ansible, and we have it as a technology preview, meaning that it's not completely fully supported yet, but we definitely are taking support calls on it. And we also now add Ansible package as part of our /15 client tools. The version, I wouldn't go with this version here. It's probably changed since the time I made the slide deck, but you can see 2.9 is the version we're at right now. So we allow in 4.2 to register your Ansible control node, display and discover your playbooks, and just essentially be able to reuse your existing playbooks and run them where you need. With the UI, we gave you a nice UI to go ahead and operate the Ansible control nodes, giving you an API endpoint, and this has been quite a long time feature request from our customers and from the community. So now that you know the why, let me show you the how. So let me walk through you how this gets set up. So here, this is the SUSE Manager interface. You will register the system that is to be your Ansible control node, and then select it, and then you'll see this screen. Here, you'll do the Ansible control tick box. This SUSE Manager will then check to see if you have the Ansible package installed. If you don't, it will go ahead and install it. Once it's done, you'll see this screen will appear. Now you have a tab called Ansible. Now let's go ahead and now you have that control node set up. Let's go and get the playbooks and inventory files imported. So now that you clicked on the Ansible tab, you'll see that you could add a path for your playbooks, or you could add multiple paths for playbooks. If your playbooks are separated by directories based on lines of business, based on function, based on OS, this is a great place where you can add as many as you need. Now you can add your inventory files when you click it here. And again, you can add as many inventory files as you need as you break up your environment, or have your environment's already been broken up. Once you've done with that and you click on inventory, you get to see just how this inventory is ingested. You could then take a look. This is a graphical presentation of it, just to give you an idea. And this is a good way to check to make sure your inventory file has been imported correctly. So once that's done, let's go ahead. You're ready. You got your playbooks pulled in. Let's go ahead and push it into your environment. So now on the playbooks tab, you'll select the path you're looking for that playbook, and then go ahead and select the playbook. Once you select the playbook, you get to see what the playbook's content looks like here. Okay. You would then click on the inventory file that you would need, where it contains your target servers. And then a job will be scheduled at this point. you can check the status of completion of that job under the events tab. And this is what that looks like. So essentially now we just saw a really step-by-step representation on how uh, SUSE Manager will deploy a playbook. I just want to give you a kind of a logical perspective on this. So if you look at here, this is the way you would do as a recap for a typical simple Ansible environment. Uh, Typically, an admin would have to SSH over to the control node, go into the directory, run the Ansible commands, pick the inventory, and then execute upon Ansible upon its target clients. The one downside to this is having administrators the ability to go ahead and SSH to that control node, and it could be multiple control nodes. And uh, again, I'm not to say it's a great security risk, but there is always the possibility of a problem with that many administrators connecting to a control node. Within SUSE Manager and its integration is you just log into the web front end. You select your control node in the list of systems that you have access to, and then you select your playbook, you choose your inventory file, and then you go ahead and schedule the job. One thing really is nice about scheduling the jobs, I don't have to do it right now. I could do it tonight. I could do it on the weekend. I could do anytime I want, and then I could check on the events and see if the job completed as we need. So that's really it in a nutshell. So now that they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, Pablo will now take you through a demonstration of the Ansible integration itself.
Okay, so it's demo time. Let's now take a look and see how this works in live. So first thing I have here is a SUSE Manager for the 3 environment. This is public beta of SUSE Manager for the 3, and I have few systems here registered. I have, on the other hand, system called Ansible controller, which is actually a SLE15 SP3 system where I have Ansible here installed. And this is actually my Ansible control node. So I'm using this host as an Ansible control node for managing some instances using Ansible. In this case, as you see, we are using version 2.9.21. Together with this, I have, of course, my Ansible inventory. I have one here. It is the Ansible host where I have some sister here defined, as well as some groups and some configuration. Now, together with this, I also have some playbooks here installed under SIB playbooks. For example, one for making a system to become a LAMP server, and also for doing some examples and experiments here during the SUSECON, as you would see in a moment. So let's just check that this is actually working. So I'm going to run Ansible to target my SUSECON group, and let's just do a test ping and see if this is actually working before we continue. So yeah, we see here that we have two systems here that we are managing with Ansible here, and they are successfully responding. Okay, so let's go back to our SUSE Manager. And the first thing we need to do in order to manage an Ansible control node with SUSE Manager is to register the Ansible control node in SUSE Manager. In order to speed up things, I already have this system register, but if not, of course, you would need to go to bootstrapping and register the system as usual into SUSE Manager. Once we have this, we can go to the system profile for this particular system. And what we need to do for telling SUSE Manager that this is an Ansible control node is to go to properties. And here we see system types and we see Ansible control node. We need to click on this, and now we are going to update the properties. Okay, yeah. Let's just see. We need to get a confirmation. Yeah, as we see, Ansible control node type has been set, and SUSE Manager recommends us to trigger the state apply in order to have all the components in place. Let's just trigger it. In this case, it's just to ensure that Ansible package is installed there. Let's just take a look at the event. our high state is being executed, and it would be finished in a second. But you might already notice that as soon as we enable the system type of Ansible control node, there is a new tab appearing here for this particular system. This is Ansible. So let's go there. And what we got is, the first thing is the configuration of the Ansible control node. So here we need to define the places where we have the playbooks in the Ansible control node, as well as the inventory files that we have there in our control node. So let's just, as I showed you before, I have some playbooks here for in SRV playbooks. So let's just add that path. I have also some others in SRV Ansible examples. Let's add that other path, whatever other path you consider, you have some other playbooks here. In the same way for the inventory file, here we are adding all the different inventory files that we want to use when operating our control node. So in this case is etc Ansible host, and in the same way we can keep adding some others. All right, so once we have this initial configuration for our controller, now we can continue visiting some other tabs. For example, playbooks tab. This one, you see all the different paths I just defined. So let's just click on one. This would display, or we'll try to discover the different playbooks that are stored under this particular path that we specified. And we would see the list of available playbooks that are found here. As we see the LAMP one and also the SUSECON one playbook. Okay. For inventories, it's basically the same. So we click on inventory, and we have here a way to gather the Ansible inventory from our Ansible control node. We can see the groups, and it would also show you, as we would see in a second, as we see here, this is the, let's say, the raw inventory, different groups, different configurations that are set on this particular inventory. And we see that SUSE Manager here already noticed that some of the systems that are here defined are already system registered in SUSE Manager. So he add the links here to the corresponding system profile in SUSE Manager for this particular system. But it also noticed that some other hosts in this inventory are not actually registered in SUSE Manager, like this one, another CentOS 8 minion. So it would allow you to click on here and do an easy bootstrapping of that particular system into SUSE Manager if that's the case and you really want that. In any case, let's go back here. We want to go actually and trigger the execution of what playbook. I wanted to show you the execution of the I wanted to show you first what happened when you go to visualize a particular playbook. So this one, for example, when we click on it, we are going to display the content of the playbook. So this is the content for this particular SUSECON playbook. And as you see here, this is a simple playbook targeting the web servers group, and it's basically having some tasks defined to install Apache, to also copy some index file, and then start the Apache service. Here we have the scheduling options. So in this page, we are able to trigger the SUSE Manager action for running a playbook. We can schedule this action to happen as usual, wherever daytime we want, or we can even make this action to happen as part of, to be part of some more complex action chain. When you are going to schedule the execution of a playbook, you need to also specify the inventory that you want to use when running this particular playbook. In this case, I'm setting this one, and we have here the option of flashing the Ansible fact cache in case that this is needed for the execution. One important thing here as well is the test mode. So you see here that in the same way for that for the high state, we have a test mode toggle here that allows us to run this action in a dry run way. So we are not executing anything. We are just checking what needs to be done in order to run the playbook as a test mode. So in this case, we are going to run it fully. So let's just schedule. And yeah, an action has been scheduled for the playbook execution. Let's go here. And we see we have the action. Well, the action is still pending. It would take a moment. Let's just wait for some seconds until the action is picked up. And by the way, let me also show you here, because I have my monitor for the VM, so we should also see that, yeah, now this is starting to be executed. As you see, well, the action is already picked. Let's just see the VM monitor. So you see the controller node is doing something, and this particular playbook should be targeting our Ubuntu 2004 minion. We see now the Ubuntu 2004 minion is doing stuff, which is basically installing the Apache, copying the files, and let's just wait for some seconds until this is finished and our execution for the playbook is finished. Okay, we see that there is still some activity. Our Ubuntu menu is installing and we are probably already getting the results. Yeah, successful execution. If we go here, we see the output for the playbook execution. We see the package were installed and we also deployed the index files I just told you. So let's actually double check this. Let's go here. Let's check the IP for this particular minion and let's see what we get here. Yeah, exactly. So this was the example index file that we were using. So this is an Apache server configured by Ansible and SUSE Manager. Yeah, so as you saw, we just used SUSE Manager to operate an Ansible control node where we have some infrastructure managed by this control node. And we are able to schedule the execution of playbooks as part of SUSE Manager actions or even action change. Yeah, and you see how this is working and how you can operate that using the SUSE Manager UI. Also wanted to show you that if we go to events for the Ubuntu 2004 minion, we should see here also the result actions for any package that was installed or during the execution of the playbook, etc., etc. All right, so that was it then. What I wanted to show you, I hope you have now a better idea and you can feel how easy it is to actually operate your Ansible control node, integrate your playbooks here, being able to run them, operate your inventories, etc. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show you on this demo today. Now, for finishing up this presentation, let's now wonder now what. So what's coming next here on the roadmap? So we want to continue doing improvement on the UI UX experience here for the Ansible playbook execution and also for the inventory handling. We wanted to also improve how we parse the inventories and playbooks, so we are able to extract and better parsing the variables, groups, and do this kind of things. Also in the roadmap, playbooks with forms, so being able to inject dynamic variables into the playbooks. That's also something we have in the roadmap. Also support for Ansible 2.10, where there are some big changes. Of course, based on your feedback, we can also define some new steps on this roadmap. Some few links we want to also give you here. These are good resources. Of course, the SUSE Manager webpage, where SUSE Manager product is described, and there are some also usable GitHub resources from that has been contributed from our consulting teams based on customer experience, etc. There are a few useful links here. And also some useful text that we think it's also nice to have here. All right, so now we are in question time. So feel free to write any questions that you have around this session, around Ansible integration in SUSE Manager, and we will be more than happy to write and answer your question. So thank you very much. I hope you like this session and you keep enjoying the rest of the SUSECON Digital 22. Thank you very much.